Hi, today I am going to discuss about value of biodiversity. The learning outcome of this module will be that you will be able to explain what is the value of biodiversity, whether it is indirect use value or direct use value, consumptive value, productive value or non-consumptive value. It also includes opinion value, existence value and aesthetic value. I will start the presentation with the quote of great economist Smith that the origin of all wealth came from the bosom of earth. This quote shows the linkages, the great bondage between the economy and natural resource or biodiversity. The value of biodiversity can be divided or categorized into two forms, private value or social value. Private value put the price tag and social value is the value to the society. The society value is different between communities and countries and it depends upon various factors like social status, social preferences, the technology, advancement of the technology, the assessment or economy of that particular country or community. So, the biodiversity value, though it's very difficult to measure, but it's mandatory. Biodiversity, as we know, is variety and variability of living organism in different ecosystem. The terrestrial, inter alia, aquatic or ecological complex which they are part. It includes the totality of gene, species and ecosystem. So, biodiversity value can be divided in broadly two heads. One is utilitarian value. The utilitarian value is also known as instrument value, extrinsic value, anthropocentric value or use value. The second is intrinsic value, which is also known as inherent value or ethical value. The classification of biodiversity value has been or is being classified by different scientists, different naturalists, different environmentalists in different way. But basically they all fall in these two broad categories. The utilitarian or anthropocentric, as its name include, it's human centric or use value. This includes all the goods and services which is provided by the biodiversity. Goods, as we all know, it includes food, fodder, fuel, medicine, different type of products like you can say animal product, meat, fish, seafood, etc. or plant product in the form of fruits, vegetable, crop plant, etc. and services which are indirect use value, indirect like for example climate regulation, fresh air, clean air, nutrient cycling, nitrogen, oxygen, etc. Intrinsic value or inherent value or ethical value is the value of biodiversity on an ethical ground or on a spiritual ground that is being divided. It also called non-use value. It may be bequest value, opinion value or existence value as divided by or spiritual value as divided by as classified by different scientists. Here I am going to describe the value of biodiversity in the following heads: direct economic value, which include consumptive use value and productive use value. Then indirect economics value, which is non-consumptive use value. Amenity value, which is again can come under the head of indirect economic value or non-consumptive value. Option value and existing value. First of all, direct economic value. This refers to the goods and services. It is divided into consumptive use value and productive use value. Consumptive use value is the value which does not have a market price or which we consume and use for our daily purpose without paying the price. For example, the people who are living near the land, they harvest the fuel wood for their daily purpose. They use medicine in their day-to-day life. So, this is consumptive use value. The consumptive use value, though it does not include into the country's GDP because we do not pay the price, but if you see that this is having a very high value. For example, the consumptive use values of various food, fruits, vegetable or crops which we take or medicinal plant, still in the world 80% of the population which is living in rural area or in developing country, they depend for their medicine on this biodiversity. Likewise, in various parts of the world, for example in Africa, 80% of the food for in Kenya or some area comes from the animals. So, meat consumption. If this biodiversity is being lost, those population, those community are forced to relocate because they cannot pay the price, they are not economically sound to pay for the market value. Likewise, there are many medicines which are being used regularly by the local people in the form of biodiversity or because of various genetic variation, wild relative and various herbs and shrubs and medicine plant found in the nature. So, this is consumptive value which is not included in the GDP, but it has got very high value. The second is productive use value. This is the value or economic value of biodiversity which is harvested and its price is being paid in the market. For example, there are various type of plant product which is being sold, animal products, hives, skins, etc. And there are different type of forest product, rattan, etc. Non-forest product, minor forest product which is being sold in the market. The productive use value of these product is very high. For example, in America, 4.5% of GDP comes from this productive use value. This is in case of America, imagine where the developing country where there are very less industries, the countries which depend solely on mainly on biodiversity or plant, animal or their product, the GDP will be quite high. Then the second is indirect economic value. This indirect economic value refers to the value of biodiversity which though is not harvested, is not destroyed, but it provides indirectly the value to the biodiversity. Again, indirect economic value, though it is not included in the GDP of a country, but if we calculate, many economists have calculated and they have found that the indirect economic value is more than direct economic value. The indirect economic value, it includes ecosystem processes and ecosystem services. Goods are included in direct economic value. So, what are the ecosystem processes? What are the ecosystem services which have of tremendous or which have a very high value for the sustenance of not only in environment, but also for having a very high economic value. These services are, for example, fresh water, productivity of an ecosystem. Productivity, if you see, is the measure of production, and it also includes the carbon sequestration. It is a very high economic value for the ecosystem and earth. Same way, climate regulation, water cycling, nutrient cycling, all these have very high indirect economic value these are also called non-consumptive value because they are not consumed directly, they are indirectly consumed, or they have the economic value or indirect use value. The next one is amenity value. Amenity value is also known as recreation value, or it can also be categorized into indirect economic value. The amenity value refers to the price or we pay monetary sense for our recreation. For example, there are ecotourism. If you see tourism, it is a very big industry along with the other industry. People like to go for their recreation. People like to go different places where they can explore the ecosystem. Ecotourism is also part of tourism, where like people wanted to go to tropical rainforest, people wanted to see the elephant, African elephant. So for that they are ready to pay the monetary, they indirectly or directly they contribute to the economy of that particular country or particular place. In India, people like to go Jim Corbett Park, or people wanted to go to Valley of Flower, and the monetary value or monetary recreation value it gives to the biodiversity. So amenity value is also indirectly a non-consumptive value through which the monetary gain is being, without harvesting or without destroying the biodiversity, can be used. Then the next one is option value. Option value has got the, you can say it is in the future use of the biodiversity. The people, we are having a very high population. We all know that the population is around 7 billion, and 2050 it is estimated to be 9 billion. So we are dependent on biodiversity for our daily life, food, fuel, direct value. So we know that if the population is day by day increasing, the biodiversity need to be explored more. The option value includes the tapping of genetic potential for the future. For example, it's called bioprospecting. There are number of wild relative of the plants which can be tapped for future consumption. Not only plant, there are medicines which can be bioprospected. For example, I can say, if you see agriculturists will see biodiversity as open value for different cultivars, for traditional breeding or for biotechnological breeding. He will find the value which is having disease resistance, which is having pest resistance, which can resist the climate change, or is a hardy variety they will be looking or bioprospecting. For an entomologist, he will look for a biocontrol agent which can sustain. For an fisheries, they will be looking the different genetic resources which can be used as food or directive use value. So option value is the value for the bioprospecting for the future. Then existence value. Existence value, in one way or other, it is also known as bequest value. This is the value which we assume that the price we pay for sustaining the biodiversity, not only for this generation, for next generation also. Like there are peoples who believe that conserving environmental ethics, they believe in conserving the biodiversity, they believe that wildlife should be conserved because it may be used not only for this generation, for the next generation also. So this is existent value. So value of biodiversity in a broad sense can be categorized or classified as direct economic value, which is having consumptive use value and productive use value. Then indirect economic value, amenity value, option value, and existence value. Coming to the next value is ethical value. Why biodiversity is need to be protected ethically. There are few points which I wanted to focus is that number one, each species has right to exist. In the environment, in the ecosystem, there are number of species. Around 1.7 million species have been identified, and it is estimated that the range may be 30 million to 100 millions. The species may be very tiny species, microorganism, fungi, bacteria, viruses which we cannot see from our naked eyes, and there may be the tallest tree, like we know that sequoia or redwood, Californian redwood, but whether the species is very small or it is very big, a species, whether it is having any economic value or it does not have any economic value, whether the species can be used for some utilitarian purpose, human centric purpose, whether it cannot be used, every species has a right to exist in this environment, in this ecosystem, and nobody has right to eliminate these species just because he or she or they think that this species is not useful, or this species can be harvested for their personal gain or for their monetary benefit. The second argument which I will put forth is all species are interdependent. Though we don't see the linkages between all the species, but all the species in this biome are interdependent. We know about different type of cycling. The species are through, we know about the climate regulation. So all species in this cycle, they are interdependent, they are interlinked, and sometime removal of a species from the ecosystem can ultimately lead to the elimination of that particular ecosystem. There are keystone species. Keystone species are the species in which entire ecosystem depends. If they may be very small, it's not like that keystone species are big species, big plant producer. They may be decomposer, they may be a microorganism which we are not able to see, but disappearance of that species from the environment can lead to the disappearance of entire ecosystem. So all species are interdependent. The third one is people have responsibility to act as steward of the earth. The believer of this ethical value believe that the earth is being created by God. So each and every species, each and every individual which is being created by the God should be saved, because these are the creation of God. This is deep embedded in their cultural belief, in their spiritual belief, in their religious belief. We have seen that there are many cultures which has been from thousands of years they are there, and still they are existing, but there are few cultures which have perished very easily. The reason being is lack of ethical value, the consideration for their nature. So the people who believe that each and every individual is made by God, they conserve the nature, they save each and every individual which is being created by the God. The next is people have responsibility to future generation. Like this is an era of sustainable development. We all know that we should not only think about this generation but our next generation also. The people believe, the sustainable development argue that the resources which are there we have borrowed from our future generation and we have to return to them. So we should use these resources in a way that the future generation should not in any way be deficient of these natural resources. The sustainability of natural resources is very important. Then respect, ethical value, let's say that respect for human life and concern for human interest are compatible with respect to biodiversity. It means that it doesn't mean that humans are separate and other living organisms are separate. They all are interdependent, and if we are respecting human beings, we should respect the nature. Then nature has spiritual and aesthetic value that transcend into its economic value. It means that use value, productive use value, consumptive value, each and every individual has some economic value and it has some monetary value as well as this. The next is biodiversity is needed to determine the origin of life. All the scientists after so many years also they are studying how the life has been originated. So each and every species has their specific DNA sequence which tells about their genetic origin. So if a species is being lost, the information which is coded in its gene will be lost. For example, if chimpanzee is being lost or if some orangutan is being lost, our evolutionary scientists are studying how the evolution took place, how from chimpanzee the human being is evolved, or from how orangutan is closely related to human being. If this is being lost, the value is the origin of life, studies of origin of life can also be lost. So there are different values which tells about the environmental values or biodiversity value. One by one we will now discuss about these value which gives about the valuation of the biodiversity. Number one is total environmental value. The total environmental value TENV refers for function of primary value as well as total economic value. It means it includes goods as well as services. Goods, we talk about primary value, and total economic value, we talk about the services. Total economic value is total value of biodiversity, if we say, is in direct value. This is function of primary value as well as total economic value. The primary value refers to the value of the system, characteristic upon which all ecosystem function depends. So, it is ecosystem functions, what we say that goods which we get from the ecosystem. Total economic value, this total economic value is also called as total value, TV or value. This total economic value denotes sum total of all kinds of value attached to biodiversity minus the primary value. All kinds of values means services, if we talk about, this is total value. Then use value. Use value represent values arising from an actual use made up of a given component of biodiversity, how we are using it. And if you see use value, it is a function of direct and indirect use value. Direct use value, again consumptive and productive. Indirect use value, again non-productive, non-consumptive use value. Direct use value refers to the actual uses, especially in consumption. Direct use value presents the economic value derived from direct use or interaction with biological resources or resource system. Then consumptive use value. Consumptive use value, it is a direct use value. Consumed, how much we consumed without attaching a price tag to it. We harvest it and we use it without including in the gross GDP or tagging a market price. It represents the value placed on biodiversity component that is consumed directly or enjoyed directly without passing through a market. Then direct use value, this refers to the actually use, especially in consumption, which we consume. It represents the economic value derived from direct use or interaction with biological resources or resource system. Consumptive use value, this is direct use value. It represents the value placed on biodiversity component that is consumed directly, enjoyed directly without passing through market. Then productive use value, the value given to a component of biodiversity that is commercially harvested or it is a source of commercially harvested product. Indirect use value, benefits arising out of an ecosystem function, water regulation, climate regulation, biological nitrogen fixation, nitrogen cycle, etc., which are ecosystem services. Non-consumptive use values refers to the value which the component or system of biodiversity possess in terms of functions or service offered. Non-use value, it's relate to the safeguarding or existing of assets even though not related to their actual use in a foreseeable period. Option value, as I have told, it's a bioprospecting value. How much we are willing to pay to safeguard an asset for an option of using it in future. Quasi-option value, it's the value of the future information which is made available through the preservation of resources. Existence value again, it refers to the value deriving from the existence of a particular assets, whether a particular species, habitat or ecosystem is there or it exists. Then bequest value, it is for future generation, it is for sustainability, it defines the willingness to pay, how much we are willingness to pay for ensure that people, our next generation, future generation would inherit a environmental asset. In short, now I will give you wetland. Wetland, why I have taken a wetland? Because wetlands are the very productive ecosystem. They are the ecosystem which are very rich in biodiversity. So in wetland, there is not only the ecosystem function, but ecosystem services are also very tremendous. If you see the wetland, the use value of wetlands, it includes fish and meat, fuel wood, timber, medicinal plant, edible fruits, plants and animal. These are direct use value. If you see the indirect use value of the wetland, it includes soil fertility, pollution control, drinking water, transportation, recreation and tourism, and educational biological services. Option value of wetland includes future products, for example, medicines, genetic resources, biological insight, food resources, building supply, and water supply. So these are the values which we get from different wetlands. To summarize today's presentation, I will say that biodiversity is of tremendous value. The value, it's very difficult for valuation of the biodiversity, but still it is very important. If we see that direct value and indirect value, the indirect value are the ecosystem services provided, direct value are consumptive and non-consumptive uses, or productive, consumptive and productive uses, goods that we get from the biodiversity, food, fuel resources, medicines, and other product from animal and plant origin. Then there is opinion value, which refers to the future value, bioprospecting value, existence value, how much we are ready to pay for our future generation. This is all for today's lecture, today's module. Thank you.